All right, here we go. I am not one to get spooked easily. Maybe that's just me being full of myself, but it's the truth. Being in the military kind of grounds you, you know? Shows you what you're made of. Teaches you when to be scared and when not to be. About a month back, I definitely had a good reason to be scared. Unless I was just hallucinating the whole dang day, I can't make heads or tails of what I saw. I've been fishing every season since I hung up my military boots. That's a decade now. Bass, catfish, trout, I've caught them all. And I eat what I catch. I am not a trophy fisherman. You probably wouldn't even know I was a fisherman if you just dropped by my place on a lazy afternoon. I don't keep fishing magazines on the coffee table. My tackle box is stashed away in the garage, out of sight and out of reach. I don't talk about fishing. It's my alone time. Out there, away from the hustle and bustle with a fishing rod in my hands, it's kind of soothing usually. About a month ago, that peace and quiet went out the window. I had recently moved my fishing spot from its usual place in the Florida Keys. I set it up about 20 miles towards the mainland in the Florida swamps. I just wanted a change of scenery. Looking back, that might not have been the best idea because something found me out there. Despite all the camouflage and concealment, something picked up my scent and came right for me. It was hunting me like a gator on a duck. I was sitting in my little boat, all cozy and unprepared. It probably thought I was an easy meal. If I'd been any less lucky that day, I probably would have been eaten. I didn't hear it coming. That's a bit embarrassing, but I didn't. I only saw it when it emerged from the swamp and slithered into the clearing. It was huge. At first, I thought it was an alligator, but its scales were too long, too thick and wild. When I aimed my fishing spear in its direction, I saw the beast for what it was. A snake, I think. A snake larger than any creature I've seen in North America. It was looking right at me. It was looking at me and hissing. Hungry, I could tell. I was shocked. I was appropriately afraid. My fishing spear was not the kind of weapon designed to take out creatures of that size. It kept coming toward the boat. I gripped my spear tighter, just in case I'd have to jab to keep the beast moving. The base of my boat was a few feet off the water. When that thing got close and reared up, its head was level with the edge of the boat. I jabbed it. And it didn't flinch. It hissed and thrashed, almost annoyed, and it attacked the boat itself. It could have slithered up there, I bet. It could have joined me in the boat and had me cornered. I don't know why it didn't. Maybe it was just toying with me. Maybe I ticked it off and it wanted to tick me off right back. It tore through the boat in seconds. The next thing I knew, the entire boat was capsizing. I fell into the water and went tumbling with it. I hit the water hard, lost my breath. Most of the boat collapsed right on top of the snake or the gator or whatever the heck it was. To this day, I still don't know what it was. Luckily, the weight of the boat knocked it down. Disoriented it. The bottle of fish attractant I had with me busted open. The scent must have hit that animal like a whirlwind. It thrashed at the splintered remains of the boat and gave me just enough time to swim. I made it to the shore with my spear in hand. I knew I couldn't outswim it. It was only a matter of time before it picked up my scent again. I turned around and used a tree to steady my aim. I was still pretty shaken from the fall. I waited. I held my breath and I waited, not moving. I watched the snake thing rake its tail through the water, searching for the source of the enticing odor. When its tail came up empty, it started to look around again. I watched as it reared up again and realized a horrifying truth. Its body sat just as naturally upright as it did on all fours. It didn't struggle to hold its balance at all. It spotted me again. It hissed, and it slithered toward me, this time moving on the surface of the water. Luck found me again at that moment. If the snake hadn't reared up, I would have been aiming at its back and its tail. On its hind end, though, I could get to its underbelly. I could get to somewhere important. When I jabbed this time, it hissed. I screamed with every ounce of air in my lungs. I screamed until I was empty. It must have been enough. I watched the snake turn around and flee in the other direction. I waited again. I knew I had to. I had to make sure that it wasn't circling around me, trying to approach from the flank. It took me hours to make it back to my truck. Every sound and movement put me on edge. I don't scare easy. At least I didn't used to. The more time that passes between that encounter and now, the more I want to know what that animal was. I'll tell you one thing, though. I'm not willing to go back to get those answers. I'm built for a lot of things, but fishing for that creature is not one of them. At least I can take my fishing rod anywhere else in the world. That monster thing, it can have the Florida swamps. I'm a Pittsburgh native, and I have a story that I think you'll be interested in. So, I work at the local children's museum as an educator. I put on programs for the kids, craft demonstrations, and things like that. It's pretty fun. I spend a lot of my working hours interacting with children under the age of 10. I started noticing things because the kids were acting weird. I had a group of preschoolers for one of our hour-long workshops. I couldn't keep their attention, which happens sometimes, not very often, but it happens. What concerned me this time was that they all kept huddling in the same corner of the room. They faced the wall and would just flail their arms around, like they were waving to someone I couldn't see. I was worried that some of the smaller kids could get hurt, so I went to break them up. When I got in that corner, I felt a chill pass through me. I assumed it was an overhead draft or something and figured I would tell my manager later. But the thing is, I had several lessons in that exhibition area, and each time the same thing would happen. The kids would all choose the same corner to pack into, and they'd start waving and trying to climb up the walls. Whenever I tried to move them, I felt a blast of cold come out of nowhere. It creeped me out, to be honest. And again, I work with really little kids. They're hard enough to wrangle on a good day. I finally asked one of the 6-year-olds what game they were playing. She said it wasn't a game. They just wanted to play with the lady in the corner. And this threw me off because aside from myself and my aide, there were no other adults in the room. I asked her if she could describe this lady or if she had a name. I thought it was a simple enough question. The girl said she didn't have a name and that her skin was gray. That was all she could tell me. So I played along just to get through the workshop. My aide wanted to tell our boss about it, or even the parents, but I wasn't convinced it was that bad. It's not like the kids were hurting each other or damaging anything. I honestly think I would have kept ignoring it if things had stayed that way. But then we had an incident. I was keeping my eye on one of the boys because he had gone into the corner with the other kids and was acting sort of jumpy. I thought he might have been getting overwhelmed. I was just about to pull him aside when he slid backwards across the floor. It was like someone had grabbed the back of his shirt and dragged him along. The boy was giggling, but I was terrified. An invisible hand had just pulled him clear across the room. There was no ignoring that. Plus, my aide had seen it too. He looked just as scared as I was. Which made me feel better, honestly. Otherwise, I would have thought I'd gone crazy for a second. I took the boy out of the room and looked him over. He seemed fine, and it's not like I could take him to my supervisor as proof the place was haunted. So instead, I marched him over to a different activity group. I told one of the other educators that he wasn't fitting in with my group of kids, and she accepted that explanation. Easy. Which left me the task of figuring out how to corral a group of kids away from the ghost in the room. It was my aide that started to call the thing a ghost. I didn't want to think about being in the room with someone's dead spirit. The only solution I could come up with was sectioning off that corner of the room with a bunch of tables and chairs. I told the kids it was a fort, and that anyone who got through the rest of the workshop without disturbing it would get a sticker. Thankfully, that was enough to get them to listen. I wish I'd thought of that earlier. Anyway, me and my aide got through the rest of the lesson without incident. We got our next batch of kids and kept the fort up. There wasn't much time for us to discuss what had happened until the end of the day. We were one of the last couple of people to finish up, and we had to do a sweep of the building. We debated whether to tell our supervisor or if there was even a way to explain it. I figured that I had been willing to brush it off until I saw something truly strange. Why would our boss be any different? He admitted that I had a point. And it wasn't like we could close off that exhibition area. It was one of our largest rooms. When we circled back to the room and started to take down the fort, I felt that chill again. It made me more anxious than it had before. I just wanted to pack up and leave. I was scared of what would happen if the thing tried to grab me. I was trying to work as quickly as possible, and all of a sudden I couldn't move. I was just standing there, shivering, locked into a standing position. I don't know why. I tried to raise my arms or call for my aid across the room, but I couldn't. It was like someone else had locked down my body. I was frozen like that for at least a minute before I could move again. My heart rate was going crazy. I bolted to the front of the building and stayed there until my aide finished cleaning up. It was hard to come into work the next day. But I think the spirit left. The kids went back to normal. There was no more huddling. I hope the ghost stays gone, although I am worried that it's just waiting for another dull moment or went looking for someone else to freak out. Benny and we were both working this boring corporate job. Then came 2019, the year that recession hit. We were both laid off, just like that. We didn't have any major obligations, and we thought, why not take this opportunity to do something we've always wanted to do? So we decided to go on a road trip. You know, the classic American road trip, Route 66, the whole shebang. We packed up Benny's old truck with enough food and camping gear for 2 weeks. We started our journey from Chicago, looking forward to exploring the open road. It was exhilarating, escaping from the corporate jungle to the actual wilderness. 3 days into our journey, we decided to camp for the night in Oklahoma. We found a cozy spot next to a lake, set up our tent, and started a fire. We even caught a few fish from the lake and roasted them over the fire. I got to tell you, those were some of the best tasting fish I've ever had. The night was calm, and there was a slight breeze. We got into our tent and crashed. But around midnight, we heard something weird. It sounded like something, or someone was outside our tent, and trust me, it didn't sound like any animal we knew. Benny, brave as always, wanted to go out and check. I told him to hold up, maybe whatever it was would just go away. But the noise kept getting louder and closer. Then we did it. We unzipped the tent just a crack to peek outside. And what we saw, man, it was like something out of a horror movie. This hulking, hairy figure was moving around our campfire. It was on 2 legs like a man, but it was no man. It was at least 7 feet tall. We were frozen with fear. We sat there barely breathing, thinking this was it. We were in deep trouble. This creature, it had these glowing red eyes, and its face looked like something out of a nightmare. It let out a loud, guttural growl that sent chills down our spines. Benny, he had brought this flare gun for emergencies. He grabbed it and fired a shot into the sky. The creature let out a deafening howl and bolted into the darkness. We didn't sleep a wink that night. As soon as dawn broke, we packed up and got the hell out of there. We didn't stop driving until we reached a small town. We went straight to a diner, ordered a ton of food, and over a cup of coffee, we talked about what we'd seen. The locals overheard us, and they didn't seem surprised. Some of them even started arguing about the local legends of a beast in the woods. Benny and I thought about reporting it, but decided against it. We just wanted to forget the whole experience. But I gotta tell you, it's hard to forget something like that. Sometimes I wonder if we should have continued our road trip. But who knows what that thing was capable of. Anyway, that's my story. Hard to believe, right? But I swear every word is true. I was chilling with my buddies at Goshen Pond up in good old New Jersey, near the Pinelands. We decided to go camping for some fun and adventure. And let me tell you, we were having a blast. Hiking, kayaking, swimming, you name it. Now it was around 7 or 8 in the evening, and we were all gathered around the campfire, cooking up some delicious grub and having a great time. The sun had just set, so it was getting pretty dark, but we could still see what was going on. We were joking, laughing, and fooling around when suddenly this horrendous smell hit us like a ton of bricks. I'm telling you, it was like someone had cracked open a bunch of rotten eggs right under our noses. The stench was so strong, we thought the meat we brought had gone bad. But when we checked, it was all fine. That's when it hit us that something was off. And then things got really quiet. You know that eerie silence in movies just before something bad goes down? Yeah, that's what it was like. It gave me the creeps, my friends too. And then, in the distance, we heard this weird high-pitched scream. But let me tell you, it was no human scream. It was like nails on a chalkboard, making my blood run cold. Even now, just thinking about it gives me the heebie-jeebies. We all just froze, staring at each other around the campfire. One of my buddies suggested it could be some wild animal like a coyote or a cat in distress. But deep down, we all knew it wasn't no ordinary critter. We scanned the tree line, keeping an eye out for any signs of danger. We packed up our food real quick, just in case it was some wild animal on the prowl. Just as we were putting out the fire, we heard this strange beat, like soft drums pounding in the distance. It's hard to describe, but the sound kept getting louder and louder. We looked around trying to figure out where the noise was coming from. We thought maybe it was some other campers nearby, but boy, were we wrong. 'Cause right at that moment we saw it. I'm telling you, this thing was massive, at least 6 feet tall. And here's the kicker. My friends saw it too. I ain't making this up, I swear. It looked like something out of a nightmare. Huge wings, like a freaking giant bat. And those eyes, man, they were glowing red like hot coals. I could make out its scaly skin and those wicked hawked legs like a dang lizard. But the face, oh boy, the face was the freakiest part. It had a head like a goat, with a long snout and horns sticking out of its forehead. But get this, it had bat ears too. And its tongue, man, it was so long. When it screeched, I could see those razor-sharp canine teeth and those red, glowing eyes. They just pierced right through you. This thing, this demon or whatever it was, just hovered there in the air. I couldn't tell you exactly how long it stayed, but it felt like an eternity, even though it was probably just a few seconds. We were petrified, unable to move or look away, just locked in a gaze with those menacing red eyes. And then with another bone-chilling screech, it took off into the night, disappearing into the darkness. Let me tell you, we didn't waste a second. We sprinted to our tents, desperately grabbing our phones to capture any evidence of what we had just witnessed. But by the time we were ready, that creature was long gone. It had vanished in the blink of an eye. We huddled together in one tent, seeking solace in each other's presence, but sleep was out of the question. The events of that night had shaken us to our core. The next morning, we couldn't avoid talking about it. And guess what? We had all seen the exact same thing. I know it sounds insane, like a flying goat bat demon straight out of a horror movie, but I swear on everything that is holy, it was real. We even thought about reporting it to the authorities, but how do you explain something like that? Hey, officer, we were out camping and this creature with wings and glowing red eyes paid us a visit. Yeah, like they'd believe us. We tried searching online for any similar sightings, but came up empty-handed. It was like we were the only ones who had encountered this monstrosity. And you know what's even worse? When we did talk about it with other people, they treated us like we were bonkers. They either thought we were crazy or accused us of making up stories. Since that night, things have changed for us. We're constantly on edge, more cautious than ever before. I avoid staying out after dark, and we all steer clear of wooded areas. No more camping, fishing, or hiking, especially if it's in the evening. We've become wary of the unknown, forever marked by that creature's evil presence. I'm grateful for the chance to share my story here. Maybe, just maybe, someone out there has experienced something similar. We can't be the only ones. It's high time we find some answers and unravel the mystery behind that nightmarish encounter, because deep down, I know what we saw was real, and there's a world beyond our understanding that holds untold secrets. I've always been intrigued by the mysteries that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life, and I appreciate that so many people are willing to share their experiences here. Back in my university days in the heart of London, I used to work part-time at a local library. It was a great gig, not only for the extra cash, but also because I had unlimited access to all the books I could ever want to read. One evening we were about to close up, which involved tidying up the reading areas and preparing the library for the next day. I was working in the history section, which had a large window overlooking the park outside. Just outside the window was a small hill that offered a panoramic view of the park. I noticed that one of my colleagues had finished his work early and was standing at the top of the hill, seemingly captivated by something. The window was ajar, and I heard him calling out to us, urging us to come and see what he was witnessing. There were about 4 or 5 of us working that night, and we all made our way up the hill to see what had caught his attention. It was a clear summer night. The sky was dotted with stars, but one of them seemed too close and was moving in a peculiar manner. At first, we thought it might be a plane, but the way it was changing directions was too erratic. It would hover in one spot and then dart across our field of vision. We couldn't gauge its distance, but we were certain that no conventional aircraft could perform such maneuvers. After observing it for about 5 minutes, we tried to convince ourselves that it was some sort of optical illusion. We returned to the library to finish our closing duties. Once we were done, we went back up the hill to see if the object was still there. It was, and it seemed to be either brighter or closer. At this point, we decided to stick around and observe this anomaly. Some of us went back inside to grab some snacks while the rest of us sat on the hill, watching the object dart across the sky, hover in place, and drift slowly in different directions. It was unlike anything we had ever seen, and we all agreed that it seemed to be getting closer. Around the time our friends returned with the snacks, the object's light started to spiral. It was definitely getting closer and seemed to be heading towards the library. But then, it abruptly stopped in midair. Its light grew larger and larger. It seemed to be descending rapidly, but then it halted, changed directions entirely, and accelerated at an incredible speed in the opposite direction. We were spellbound. We ate our snacks and, for some inexplicable reason, decided to chase after the object to get a better look. We sprinted down the hill and across the park towards the light. It veered over the trees on the edge of the park, and we followed it. The glow from the object was bright enough to illuminate the trees, so we didn't have to worry about stumbling over roots or undergrowth. We were all excited and shouting out theories about what it could be, but I think we were also trying to mask our nervousness. Suddenly, the object stopped and descended slightly above us, not directly overhead but close enough to startle us. It then just hovered there. It was low enough now that we could see 5 red circles on its underside. There were 2 circles positioned above 3 others, forming a trapezoid shape. It was emitting a loud, pulsating sound. After hovering for a couple of minutes, the light switched off, and it went completely silent. We could still see the silhouette of the object, a stark blackness against the night sky. After a few more minutes of hovering, it shot off over the horizon with the 5 red lights at the rear. It moved with the speed of a bullet, disappearing over the horizon in a matter of seconds. In the darkness, it resembled a short, stout triangle. Then there was nothing. We were all panting from the chase. As we stood there trying to comprehend what we had just witnessed, 2 fighter jets roared overhead at an extremely low altitude. A few minutes later, we saw multiple military aircraft and helicopters flying in the direction where the lights had disappeared. At that point, we all silently agreed to return to the library. Once we were back inside, we decided that regardless of what we had seen, whether it was some sort of military experiment or something truly bizarre, we didn't want to draw attention to ourselves. We certainly didn't want to mention it to our employer. So we all agreed not to discuss it. Of course, there was no mention of the incident on the news or anywhere else. I've thought about it often over the years. I still keep in touch with a couple of the guys I was with that night, and we all have the same recollection of what happened. I doubt we'll ever get any definitive answers about all the covert operations that must be happening out there, but I kind of hope to witness something like that again. I find myself constantly scanning the night sky just in case.